Looks like it's goodbye to Granny now, huh? 2 a.m. I caught Rachel muttering to herself and went back to bed puzzled. Rachel, who resented being compared to me for her lack of cooking skills, has always disliked me. Then, out of the blue, Rachel said she'd cook for us. Something felt off. I discreetly swapped my steak with my husband's to avoid suspicion. Then, my husband collapsed, his eyes rolling back, leading to a shocking conclusion. I'm Melissa, 59 years old. I married over 30 years ago. My husband, a banker, is always busy, so I quit my job to focus on homemaking after we got married. Then our son Thomas was born, and life became a whirlwind of parenting and childcare. It was tough at times, but it all flew by in hindsight. Thomas left for college, and now it's just my husband and me. Later, Thomas married Rachel. She's flashy and seems flighty. She's beautiful, but not the kind I'm familiar with, so I rarely initiated conversations. I've seen enough mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts on TV, and thought maintaining a healthy distance was best, so I didn't interfere much in Thomas's marriage. 3 years after Thomas's wedding, during Christmas, Thomas and his wife unexpectedly came to visit. They hadn't before due to his busy schedule, but this year he managed to get leave. Christmas isn't complete without this soup. Thomas relished the soup I made, making me smile. I've always loved cooking, and both Thomas and my husband have always enjoyed my meals. Being praised for my cooking is the best feeling. Man, Mom's cooking is just the best. I'm glad to hear that. Rachel should learn to cook like this. Hey now! Thomas, full from eating, laid down and glanced at Rachel. It was a light joke, but Rachel's expression hardened. Thomas, don't say that. It's nice enough she's here. But Rachel never cooks. Stop exaggerating. No, really, she doesn't cook. It's always supermarket meals or delivery. Tasty, but gets old. I was stunned. Not once since you got married? Yeah. 3 years into their marriage and not a single meal cooked? Unbelievable. The only thing she cooks is instant ramen, right? Thomas said, laughing crudely, a bit drunk. He was just teasing a bit. Rachel glared at me fiercely and silently left the room. Such sensitivity. Even if he was drunk, saying that in front of in-laws must have been upsetting. Feeling helpless, I followed Rachel. She sat on the stairs at the end of the hallway. Rachel, I'm sorry about Thomas. He means no harm, but he's not great at reading the room. What do you want? Is that sarcasm? Her voice was lower than usual, which made me feel a bit constricted. I didn't mean it like that. Sure, I was surprised to hear you don't cook. But nowadays, you can easily get food without cooking at home, and women don't have to cook, right? You say that, but mock me in your heart. That's not true. I intended it as reassurance, but it seemed to backfire with Rachel glaring at me. It's really annoying, you know, pretending to be nice. You make me feel uncomfortable with all your cooking. It comes off as so patronizing. I was taken aback by her words. It had been a while since Thomas had come home, and it was Rachel's first time visiting with him. I had put extra effort into cooking, not realizing it was making her uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you felt that way. I really don't like that attitude. Can you just leave me alone? Rachel stormed back into the living room after yelling. I was so shocked by her strong words that I couldn't move for a while. I thought our relationship with Rachel would become distant, but she came alone a few weeks later. What brings you here today? What? I can't come to my in-laws' house unless I have a reason? No, it's not that, but... I was surprised and flustered by Rachel's confrontational attitude. I didn't think I had been rude. A heaviness settled in my chest. Rachel walked in as if she owned the place and went straight to my husband. "Robert, long time no see."
"Oh, good to see you."
"I remembered you liked these cookies when I passed by the store, so I bought some for you."
"Is that so? Thanks. Melissa, make some coffee."
"Yes." I was taken aback by Rachel's fawning voice towards my husband, so different from her attitude towards me. Apparently, they had gotten close during Christmas when I was busy with housework. As I made coffee, feeling uneasy, they were chatting happily. "Wow, being a banker is impressive, especially back in the day, right?"
"Well, I guess I did earn more than most of my classmates."
"Amazing! Must have been tough, harder than now,
"Huh?"
My husband laughed shallowly at her obvious flattery. Not wanting to see my husband pleased by a young woman's adulation, I left to go shopping. When I returned, Rachel's shoes were still there. I could hear their conversation from the hallway and couldn't help but listen in. "Thanks for the money. It's a big help."
"No problem. Just ask if you're in trouble again. Hopefully your mom's surgery goes well."
"Yes, thank you. I should head back. It's getting late." I bumped into Rachel as she was leaving the living room. Surprised by her sudden appearance, I was more concerned about their conversation. "Is your mom having surgery?" "What? Eavesdropping? That's the worst." I didn't mean to listen. I just overheard. "Is everything okay?" "It's none of your business, Melissa." I felt the need to hold her back. Something felt off. "You borrowed money from my husband, right? I can't just ignore that." "Can you not?" "Yes, I borrowed it because my mom needs surgery, and we don't have the money. What's it to you? Are we done here?" "What kind of illness? When is the surgery? It must be hard, right?" "Just stop it already." Rachel stubbornly refused to give details. I had never heard about Rachel's mom being ill. I thought Thomas would have mentioned something if there was an issue. Suddenly coming over with my husband's favorite treats and borrowing money, it seemed like she might be up to something bad. I felt bad for suspecting Rachel, but I couldn't help it. Yet I had no proof. Unable to hold back the angrily departing Rachel, I let her go with loud footsteps. Pursuing it further seemed pointless, as she wouldn't answer anything. That day, I just sent Thomas an email expressing concern about Rachel's mom. After that, Rachel started visiting once or twice a month. She always came when my husband was home and treated me coldly. "Melissa, why don't you go shopping or something?" she would suggest, trying to send me away. I wondered what they talked about, but didn't want to show my distrust openly, as it might worsen the relationship with Rachel. I didn't want to upset Thomas, so I silently left for shopping. However, if I returned early, she would complain and clearly treat me as an intruder. I couldn't help but suspect something was going on. But my husband evaded my questions, and I couldn't understand what Rachel was up to. Then one day, something changed. Thomas and Rachel came over late at night, saying they wanted to cook.
"Rachel wants to try cooking, and not just for me, but for Dad too. It's late, but they need to prepare. Could we stay over tonight?"
"Of course, you're always welcome." While my husband welcomed Thomas and his wife, I felt uneasy. Rachel, who hated me and hadn't cooked for 3 years, suddenly wanting to cook for us? I noticed Rachel giving me a creepy, meaningful smile when only I could see. Her eerie smile made my heart race. Not just Rachel's expression, but Thomas's face also caught my attention. He seemed lost in thought, only half listening to Rachel. I had a bad feeling about this. It was late, so I went to bed after a bath. However, I couldn't sleep and got up to use the bathroom, hearing voices from the kitchen. It was 2 a.m., a time when everyone should be asleep. Could it be a ghost? Fearing the worst, I peeked into the kitchen and saw Rachel standing there. Looks like it's goodbye to Granny now, huh? I couldn't make out her words clearly as she whispered to herself. Suspicious of Rachel talking alone in the shadows, I didn't want to start a fight at this hour and disturb my husband or Thomas, so I quietly returned to the bedroom. The next morning, Rachel was eagerly cooking in the kitchen. Can I help with anything? No, I'm doing this alone, so don't come into the kitchen. But there's cleaning up to do. I said I'm fine. Being chased out of the kitchen, I returned to the living room. It all seemed very suspicious. Why was she so adamant about keeping me out of the kitchen? And I couldn't stop thinking about the previous night's incident. Was she planning something? The anxiety was unbearable. And what Rachel cooked was steak.
Steak for breakfast. This is luxurious.
Both my husband and Thomas were surprised. They probably didn't expect Rachel to make steak after practicing cooking. Rachel brought 4 steaks to the table. That's when I noticed something odd. On my plate was different. This plate wasn't from our house, so Rachel must have brought it. Maybe she brought it just for today, as she usually doesn't cook. But why didn't she buy the same design for everyone? This is for you, Melissa. The steak Rachel handed me confidently didn't look different from the others, but I felt there must be a reason my plate was different. Thank you. My husband and Thomas didn't suspect anything, their stomachs rumbling at the sight.
Right, I'll add some spices.
Can you help me bring the soup then?
Sure, of course.
Thomas went to the kitchen with Rachel. My husband stood up from the sofa.
I'll go to the bathroom before eating.
Everyone left the living room, leaving me alone. That's when I secretly swapped my steak with my husband's. I just didn't feel like eating it. When Thomas, Rachel, and my husband returned, they sat down without noticing the switch.
Let's eat.
Just as my husband was about to eat, Rachel shouted, Wait! That's Melissa's! But it was too late. My husband had already taken a big bite.
What's wrong, Rachel? It doesn't matter whose steak it is, right?
Well... While watching Rachel panic, my husband started choking. I turned to him alarmed. Robert, what's wrong? Robert? He was groaning in pain, his eyes rolling back. I was in shock, only able to call out to him. But Thomas calmly called an ambulance. They arrived quickly after we explained the situation, and my husband was rushed to the hospital. I joined him in the ambulance, and Thomas and his wife followed in their car. My husband was immediately taken to the treatment room. A few hours later, Dr. Anderson informed us he was stabilized after a stomach wash. Dr. Anderson spoke to us with a serious face.
Did he ingest anything unusual before collapsing?
He ate a steak just before.
Was it store-bought?
No, Rachel made it.
I see.
Dr. Anderson fell silent with a puzzled look. Then, looking at us gravely, he said,
Actually, we found components of rodenticide in his vomit.
Rodenticide?
Rachel, what's the meaning of this?
Thomas confronted Rachel. Her face turned pale and she broke out in a cold sweat. I don't know. It must have been Melissa. She was alone before eating. I don't have rodenticide. And it would be hard to add it without being caught in just a moment. You can't know until you try. It wasn't me. Rachel was clearly panicking and looked guilty to anyone. If Rachel did it, her actions in the night and the different plate for me all made sense. Then let's call the police. What? Why would you do that? Is everything at home untouched, Thomas?
Yeah, we left immediately and didn't touch anything.
Thomas nodded seriously. Then the police can determine if rodenticide was really mixed in the steak and who did it. But we don't need to go that far, do we? Not necessary? Do you really think so? It could have been fatal. I couldn't help but get emotional. The thought that my husband could have died from such a trivial matter was unforgivable. The police will find where the rodenticide came from and whose fingerprints are on it. No, police, please! Why are you refusing so much? You didn't do it, right, Rachel? Pressed by me, Rachel crumpled to the floor, messing up her hair. It was me. I did it. She must have realized she couldn't escape and confessed, glaring at me fiercely.
Rachel, I never thought you'd do something like this.
Wait, don't misunderstand. I didn't mean for Robert to eat it, but then... Rachel clung to Thomas in panic. But his look only grew colder.
So you were trying to kill my mom?
I wasn't trying to kill anyone. I just wanted a little revenge.
Revenge?
Thomas scowled while Rachel started making excuses like a child. Because Thomas compared me to Melissa and said hurtful things about not being able to do housework.
All this harassment over that?
That's not just something. I was really hurt, and Melissa mocked me for not being able to cook, like it was an insult. I had enough.
It wasn't that bad, right? You hardly ever visited home. Only last Christmas. When could Mom harass you?
Well, that's... Rachel struggled to find words, her eyes darting around. Rachel, you've been coming to our house almost every month, haven't you? Haven't you told Thomas? What? What are you talking about? You and my husband always seem to enjoy talking together. I was often out because you treated me poorly. I don't know what you talked about, but... What are you talking about? I don't know anything about that. It seemed she hadn't told Thomas about her visits, and she was visibly shaken. But Thomas remained calm.
If you were harassed and uncomfortable, why not just avoid visiting home?
I haven't been to your home.
That's a lie,
Thomas firmly stated, to which Rachel looked bewildered. Do you believe Melissa over me, Thomas?
Yeah.
What? What's wrong with you, you mama's boy? I hate you, Thomas. Rachel screamed like a child throwing a tantrum. I watched her in disbelief as she stomped the ground in anger. You're supposed to love me, then listen to me.
That's impossible.
Rachel's eyes widened in shock at Thomas's calm response. Why not?
Did your mom's surgery go well?
What? What are you talking about?
I asked Mom. You said you needed money from Dad for your mom's surgery, right?
Rachel glared at me accusingly. You told on me?
Don't blame everything on Mom. I was bothered that you never consulted me, so I called your family. Your mom is fine.
I was so surprised that I could only stare at Thomas. Rachel was sweating profusely.
I suspected something and had a detective agency investigate you. You're having an affair, aren't you? What?
I gasped at the shocking revelation. Thomas pulled out several photos from his bag. Photos of Rachel walking hand in hand with an unknown man looking happy.
You've been giving this man several expensive gifts, haven't you?
Rachel, were you using the money from Robert to give gifts to your lover?
It seems she was using the money from Dad for her affair. And because Mom was at home, Rachel feared Dad would find out, so she wanted her out of the way.
Rachel just looked down, her silence confirming it. No wonder she wanted me out of the house. Thinking I'd be out of the way, Rachel must have thought it would be easier to borrow money from my husband.
A few days ago, I received the investigation results and was planning to talk about it, but before I could, Rachel started saying she wanted to cook for us. I thought I'd talk after that, but I never expected this.
I understood why Thomas had looked troubled when I visited. He had been suspecting and agonizing over Rachel's affair.
I can't continue with Rachel. I'll be filing for divorce.
Rachel went silent, sniffling. With all the evidence against her, she had nothing to say, but her demeanor changed at Thomas's next words.
Let's go to the police together.
What? Why would that happen?
You should pay for what you've done.
Crime? It didn't kill anyone, so it's fine, right? I was appalled that Rachel didn't understand the gravity of her cruel and dangerous actions.
If such things are acceptable, then there's no need for police. What you did is unforgivable.
No! Why would you do this to me? I'm remorseful. I'm not going to the police. Rachel screamed in a high-pitched voice. She resisted as Thomas tried to take her outside the hospital room, both of us at a loss. Then it happened.
Rachel.
A hoarse voice came from the bed, and we turned to see my husband awake. Robert, are you okay? I was so worried.
Stop lying. I heard everything.
She tried to win over my husband, probably hoping he'd take her side. But my husband acted first. What are you?
It seems I've been used by you.
That's not true.
I'm not angry, though.
My husband was still weak, looking at the ceiling and speaking slowly. Rachel visibly relaxed at his words. Robert, I'm so sorry. I swear I won't do it again. Thank you for forgiving me. She held his hand, smiling. I felt nauseated seeing her smile after all she had done. It makes me laugh a lot when I do things like that. I couldn't forgive her, even if my husband did. As I was about to protest, my husband whispered to Rachel,
I haven't forgiven you. Go to the police and pay for your crimes.
What? Why? You just said you weren't angry. Why do I have to go to the police?
I'm not angry about the money, but I'll never forgive you for trying to feed Melissa that.
Rachel was shocked to see my husband angry for the first time.
You'll pay for this crime for the rest of your life.
Realizing she had no allies, Rachel slumped down, defeated. Then she screamed. Ah! It's all your fault. If you weren't here, none of this would have happened. I'll never forgive you. Stop acting like a child. Even if I wasn't here, you would have been caught eventually. The affair, the money, it's all your fault. Shut up! Rachel cried, repeating that she didn't want to go to the police, but no one sympathized with her. I'll never forgive you for deceiving my husband and what you put him through. Rachel started crying again. She looked desperate, a far cry from her usual confident, sarcastic self. Thomas, unmoved, took Rachel's hand and led her out of the room. The police investigation revealed that the steak my husband ate was soaked in a large amount of water-dissolved rodenticide. It was hidden in our kitchen drawer, and only Rachel's fingerprints were on it, leading to her arrest. She confessed she thought the strong taste wouldn't be detected in the steak. After being bailed out, Rachel tried to turn to her lover, but he cut ties with her after learning about her crimes. Left with no one to turn to, Rachel resorted to working as a hostess. But at her age, it wasn't easy to earn, and she often got into trouble, drinking until she passed out. I was disgusted by Rachel's pathetic state and relieved we had cut ties with her. My husband, fortunately, was discharged and is living well. Although he's developed an aversion to steak, likely due to trauma, thankfully, that's the extent of his trauma. He still enjoys my cooking, and our meals together are our greatest joy. Thomas divorced and took some time to heal. But he's now dating a wonderful woman. She visited us a few times, a modest and homely lady. I sincerely hope for a bright and happy future for Thomas and his new family.
I am Serena, a 27-year-old woman. I just got married recently. Back home, my father and brother treated me terribly, but it wasn't just me. My mother also suffered at their hands. We women were treated like slaves. If my father or brother commanded something, we had to act immediately. We'd be scolded for being slow if we didn't move fast enough. It was like this since I was little. Why are you so slow? Just get it done already. Yes, Dad. You can't even do this much and you're in elementary school? What a disgrace. That's why women are useless. Don't say that, Dad. Shut up and be quiet. I don't want to be called Dad by you. I've been doing chores since preschool, but it got worse once I started elementary school. While my father and brother relaxed, my mother and I were constantly busy. Whenever they wanted a drink, we had to bring it right away. Even in the depth of winter, if they wanted ice cream, we had to go out to the convenience store in the cold. So my mother and I were always exhausted. My mother felt sorry for me and cried all the time. I'm sorry. It's because I'm weak that they treat you like this, Serena. No, Mom. Serena, you have to leave this house someday, stand on your own 2 feet, and run away from your dad and brother. But what about you, Mom? I'll be fine, as long as you're happy, Serena. When I reached 10th grade, I thought about going to college, but my father said women didn't need education. He had a very old-fashioned mindset, thinking a high school diploma was enough for a woman. But I was in college prep school, and all my friends were planning on going to college. I loved studying, and I was determined to go to college. Despite this, my father wouldn't allow it. But at that time, my mother stood up against my father. I'd never seen her so determined. She excels at her studies. That's why I'm going to let her go to college. What? Are you challenging me? How many times do I have to say that women don't need an education? What good will it do when all she'll be doing is cooking when she's married? An education will never go to waste. It'll come in handy even after she's married and has kids. Then do what you want, but I'm not paying for the tuition. Fine, then I'll take care of it. My mother had some savings and she used it to support my college education. I got accepted into my first choice university, a private one. I felt guilty about the expense, but thanks to that, I met my husband. I had always been afraid of men, but he changed that for me. He was so kind when we met at our college club. He was always cheerful and could make anyone laugh. Having grown up impressed by my father and brother, for the first time, I felt something positive towards a man. I started to think that I wouldn't mind dating someone like him, but I couldn't bring myself to confess and I kept my feelings hidden. In the end, we didn't date during our college years. After graduation, I ran into him at a reunion. He had changed a lot and had become a sophisticated city man. My family home was in New York, but in a rural area, and I had lived in an apartment during my university years. After graduation, I had been working in Manhattan, where I was known as Plain Jane at my company. I wasn't sure if a plain Jane like me was suitable to be with him, but he asked me to come over, so I did. We reminisced about our old club days and ended up dating. After a year and a half, he formally proposed, and that's how we got married. After creating my own family, I was worried about my mother back at my old home. I felt sick thinking she was still being abused by my father and brother. Hello, Mom, how are you doing these days? I'm fine. More importantly, are you doing okay, Serena? I'm fine, really. Danny helps out with the chores. He's probably even a better cook than me. Oh, is that so? I guess he got that from his father, who's a chef, right? Maybe. Don't worry about me, okay? And you need to take care of yourself, Mom. Yes, I got it. Mom said this in her usual kind voice, but somehow I had a bad feeling. I had the hunch she was in trouble, due to my father and brother's horrible treatment. They despised us for being women, but my mother in particular was targeted. It was because of the scar on her face. She had an accident before I was born, which left a prominent scar. My father would call it hideous and disgusting, so my mom always covered the right side of her face with her hair where the scar was. It was heartbreaking that my mother, who got injured defending my father, was being called ugly. It was clear my father didn't appreciate her at all. Even my brother was cruel, saying things like, "Don't come to the open house, you're disgusting." I thought those were things one should never say, even if they are family. One day my husband and I were enjoying a happy hour. In the heat of midsummer, we were sipping chilled beer while nibbling on snacks. Suddenly, our home doorbell rang. It was just before 9 p.m. and we wondered who it could be at such an hour. Stepping out with my husband, we found Mom standing there. "Oh, Danny. Mother-in-law, what brings you here at this hour? Could you lend me $20? I'm sorry for bothering you, Serena and Danny." $20 is fine, but what happened? I thought I'd head to a motel or something. A motel? What are you planning to do there now? As long as I can get some sleep, that's enough. What? I was kicked out of the house by your dad and his lot. I don't have any money. I froze in shock. When I asked her to tell me more, the details were beyond horrific. After dinner that day, Mom had been doing the usual housework. That's when Dad and brother started demanding more alcohol and ice cream. So Mom left the house with just her coin purse and smartphone. But when she got home, the door was locked from the inside. Unlock the door, I brought the drinks and stuff. Just leave it there. We don't need you anymore. What? Drop whatever you bought and disappear. A worthless wife like you. And that left my mom completely lost. She had used up almost all of her coins and couldn't even afford a taxi. So she had to walk all the way to our house. That's what happened? That's awful. Maybe I'm just useless now. Hey, Serena, let's live together with your mother. Really? Are you sure? Yeah, I don't mind. We have extra rooms. She can use one. But I can't be in the way of newlyweds. It's all right. I consider you like my own mother. Thank you. Oh, my mom burst into tears, sobbing. She must have been touched by my husband's kindness, something she was likely unaccustomed to. My husband, having lost his mother at a young age, was a hard worker raised by his chef father. He graduated from college on a scholarship, so he understands people's pain. Having such a husband, I realized how lucky I am. He was the polar opposite of my father and brother. From then on, we started our life as a 3. Whenever we came home, Mom always had a hot meal ready for us. You don't have to go to all the trouble. Danny and I can do housework too. It's all right. I want to do this. Thank you, Mom. I feel a bit guilty. After a comforting home-cooked meal from Mom, I was relaxing when the doorbell rang. At the door were my father and older brother. You're here after all. How dare you send me a text like that? What's with, I don't want to be with you anymore, he bellowed. So what? I simply told you how I felt, she retorted. Oh, you're pretty bold. When did you start acting so high and mighty? He sneered. You were the one who told me to leave, right? So I'm saying, let's get a divorce, she shrugged. Well, I don't really need an old lady like you around, but if we're divorcing, pay me alimony, he demanded. Excuse me? My father was demanding alimony from my mother in case of a divorce. I wondered what had happened. Isn't that young guy I saw you with your new boyfriend? That's cheating, isn't it? He accused. No, it isn't, she responded. Oh, you two seem pretty close, though. We didn't do anything strange. I had no idea that my mother had been with a younger man. I started to panic. Was my mother really having an affair? If she was, it would be disadvantageous for her since she and my father were not yet divorced. If my father was right, she might get sued. So I glanced at my mother, but she just winked at me. It must mean everything will be okay. You dirty, tainted old woman. You won't be able to survive on your own once we divorce. Ha ha! Go ahead. Pay me and live your pitiful life, he scorned. I don't mind if we divorce. I have a job, she stated. Huh? The young man you saw me with is a business partner of mine. He's a very talented and wonderful person. Job? But you've always been a housewife. I've been working from home, even without a computer. A smartphone is all I need. I occasionally meet him for discussions. So that was it. So I have $50,000 in my bank. Even if I divorce you, there won't be any problem. My father was dumbfounded. My brother had the same shocked expression. Neither my father nor my brother knew my mother had been working. But I was the only one who knew. She had told me secretly. She had said to keep it a secret from Dad and my brother, probably fearing they would depend on her financially. Oh, I see. Let's start over. Come back home. My father said this as soon as he found out about the money, but my mother coldly replied, Why would I? I'm not coming back. I'll divorce you. Huh? Why? I'm offering to live with you. Why are you so condescending? I'm not weak like before. I don't need someone like you, cheating man. Eh? At the words cheating man coming from my mother, my father seemed shocked. My brother standing next to him was also surprised. Didn't you say something to my business partner, Emma? She asked. Well, he's dating a woman younger than Sabrina. It's repulsive, downright disgusting. No, you've got it all wrong. It's a misunderstanding. What's there to misunderstand? Can you say the same after looking at this photo? My mother was showing a picture she had found on her phone. It was a picture of my father being cozy with a young woman named Emma. They seemed too close, and their faces were almost touching. I found myself thinking how gross this old man was. It was shocking to think that this pervert was my father. But how did my mother find out about the connection between my father and Emma, one of her business associates? There was a reason. One day she had gone to a cafe for a face-to-face meeting with Emma. Though they also met online, they made a point to meet in person once a month. During that meeting, my mother noticed the ring on Emma's finger. Apparently, it looked exactly like one my mother had bought for herself years ago. So she complimented Emma on her ring. Emma replied, Thank you. My boyfriend, an older gentleman, gave it to me. It's secondhand, but I love it because it's quite valuable. This made my mother suspect that my father might have given Emma the ring. This diamond and emerald ring was custom made for my mother, so there was no other like it in the world. Given that it was an original design, my mother suspected that my father had given it to his mistress, Emma. When she returned home and opened her jewelry box, she discovered the ring was indeed missing. That was when my mother was convinced. So I'll be asking for compensation for the affair, and we're getting a divorce. What? Who's going to do all the housework then? Really? You and your son can handle it, can't you? Both my father and brother were hopeless at domestic chores. Being unable to do anything, they had dumped everything on us women. So they would be in trouble if my mother left. I couldn't help wondering why they had chased my mother out in the first place. That's when I decided to intervene. If you're going to be in trouble without Mom, why did you chase her away in the first place? That was just to spite the mistress. What? I just wanted the other woman to suffer. I'm not the bad guy here. You're still saying that? You're the one who cheated. You're the worst. So disgusting. I had never been able to stand up to my father or brother before, but things are different now. I had a strong ally in my husband, and my mother had become stronger. I had to become stronger too to protect myself, my husband, and my mother. Feeling this way naturally, I was able to stand up to my father. My brother was crying and whining, saying he didn't know what to do next. Apparently, he can't even make an omelet. The only dishes he could make were bacon and eggs and salad. I wondered if those even counted as cooking. If they were so incapable of cooking, they could just live on instant ramen for the rest of their lives. My mother wasn't a housekeeper or a slave. Why should she have to come home cheerfully after being cheated on? My father and brother were out of their minds, I could tell. They couldn't hold a proper conversation. Well then, since it's decided we need to get prepared, I have to find a good lawyer. Hold on! I don't care anymore. I'm definitely getting a divorce, be it mediation or a trial, it doesn't matter. I've suffered emotional distress from you, and I might be able to get a lot of compensation money. No way, I don't want that. My brother was smirking at this point. Even if a divorce occurs, the parent-child relationship won't end. So he said he would still be able to inherit when our mother passed away, but it didn't turn out that way. Gaston, I'm not leaving you any inheritance. After all, you've been so insulting towards me. I won't let someone like that inherit anything. Did you know? If I specify in my will, I can prevent the distribution of my assets to you. Once again, my brother's eyes widened in surprise. It seemed he never thought his constant insults could backfire this badly. He probably didn't realize that this was the outcome of heaping profound insults on the person from whom he was to inherit. He cried out loud, almost too loudly. We lived in an apartment and his cries echoed down the hallways. I thought it might disturb the neighbors. A man from next door, who looked kind of scary, whom we tried not to interact with, came out due to the noise. He yelled at my father and brother and they scampered off like they were running for their lives. Then my mother divorced my father. It was a tough battle, but she managed to secure a hefty compensation. She cut off all ties with Emma, my father's mistress. After that, my father seemed totally downcast. My brother too, upon realizing he won't inherit anything, spent every day in gloom. My father's work suffered and he was gradually pushed into less significant roles. Finally, he voluntarily quit. My brother, who was a freelancer, couldn't make ends meet with his income alone. He reached out to me for help, but I ignored him. Of course, I blocked his calls and messages. After that, my mother moved to a different apartment. She said she felt guilty staying with us. My husband felt lonely, but I thought some distance might be a good thing. Even now, we three occasionally have dinner together and it's truly enjoyable, but soon we will become 4. That's because I am pregnant. I have no intention of letting my child meet their grandfather. I can't bear the thought of letting such a disgusting man hold my child. From now on, for my husband, my mother, and my child, I plan to become a stronger woman.
Holly always looks like she's struggling financially, doesn't she? These are my mom friends who look down on me and revel in their sense of superiority. One day, one of their daughters touched my cherished piano without asking. Please don't touch the piano. If you're going to make a fuss over your piano, then take this. After spilling coffee on it, their faces change when they learn the truth. I am Holly. I enrolled my daughter, who just turned 3, in preschool. At first, she didn't want to be apart from me, but she got used to it within a week. I feel a bit lonely, but I'm happy to see her grow. When I pick her up, she tells me all about her day. She seems to enjoy her daily experiences at preschool. I joined a mom friends group when my daughter started preschool, but honestly, I'm not great at socializing. Still, I have to get along with them for my daughter's sake. There are 6 of us in the mom friends group, including me. All of us are moms of kids who play well with my daughter. They're all lovely people with deep affection for their children. They're more experienced in parenting, so I learn a lot from them. Above all, they're kind people who accept me, even though I'm not good at communication. However, there's one person I can't get along with. Good morning, Holly. Good morning, Dorothy. Hey, what's with that ugly bag your daughter has? Oh, I made a bag from her old clothes. Seriously? A bag made from old clothes? That's so poor. I'd be embarrassed to let my precious daughter carry that. Your daughter must be trying to be considerate of you. Is that so? Dorothy continued to look down on me with a bitter smile. The mom friend I can't stand is Dorothy. She's the wealthiest mom in the group. She always wears expensive clothes and bags, and she's beautiful with a great figure, the kind of woman everyone admires. But she has a bad personality. She targets people like me who are not assertive and looks down on them. I don't have the courage to talk back, so I just smile awkwardly. All right, your house is the venue for this week's tea party, isn't it? Yes, it's my turn this week. In the Mom Friends group led by Dorothy, we have a tea party at someone's home once a week. Although it's mostly just listening to Dorothy brag, I've hosted a tea party at my home several times before. My home is not as stylish as Dorothy's, so she never misses a chance to look down on me. She'd say things like, "It's weird not to have any paintings on the wall," or "Where did you get this tasteless sofa?" She even ridiculed my cherished piano. I'm sure I'll be exhausted from forcing smiles while being looked down upon. To be honest, I'm not looking forward to it. After all, it's at your house, Holly. Your furniture is all old and not attractive, but rules are rules, so I'll go. See you later. Dorothy said what she wanted and quickly left the preschool. After parting with her, I felt heavy thinking about the upcoming tea party. On the day of the tea party, as the other mom friends entered my home, Dorothy came in last. Today, she looked even more stylish than usual. Dorothy stands out in my modest home, looking out of place. Wow, you still have all this old furniture. I gave so much advice last time. Why don't you replace this sofa already? Oh, I forgot. You can't afford it, Holly. Ignoring Dorothy's arrogance, I started preparing tea and snacks in the kitchen. The other mom friends are chatting in their seats, but Dorothy is walking around the house alone. I wish she wouldn't snoop around. It's embarrassing. Oh, Holly, you still have this old piano? Hearing Dorothy's loud voice, I rushed to the scene. She had entered my piano room without permission. I had put a "Do Not Enter" sticker on the door to that room, but Dorothy seemed to have ignored it. The other mom friends, hearing her voice, started gathering in the room. Sorry everyone, could you please not go near the piano in that room? Dorothy frowned at my timid request. What? Why would you say that? That's not how you treat guests. I apologize, but that piano is very precious to me. Even a small scratch would be a big deal. Please understand. A scratch? It's already an old piano. What's one more scratch? You really are like a poor person, cherishing something like this. Sorry, the tea is ready. Let's relax in the living room. Somehow, calming Dorothy down, we returned to the living room with the other mom friends. Dorothy seemed displeased about being corrected. She left looking irritated without even finishing her tea or snacks. I worried this might affect my daughter's friendships, but she never came home crying. For now, I was relieved. But Dorothy's arrogance escalated. She spread false rumors among the mom friends and flaunted her expensive clothes and bags. She even looked down on my husband's income and my daughter's appearance. I don't mind being looked down upon, but it's uncomfortable when she speaks ill of my daughter and husband. I told her to stop, but it didn't seem to have much effect. A month passed like this, and it was my turn to host the tea party again. I welcomed the usual mom friends, but Dorothy hadn't arrived yet. According to the others, she would be late. We decided to start the tea party without her. Without someone bragging, It was surprisingly peaceful. I was talking without tension for the first time in. But she never came home crying. It was probably Dorothy. I got up and opened the door.
Sorry, I'm late. I was picking up my daughter from daycare.
Dorothy was holding a little girl about 2 years old. Thank you for coming, Dorothy. Is your daughter joining us?
Do you have a problem with that?
No, I just wasn't expecting it.
It's none of your business. Let us in.
Sure. Sorry. Dorothy's daughter ran into the house as soon as they entered. As I tried to stop her, Dorothy pulled my arm.
She's fine on her own. She's a good girl.
But what if she gets hurt?
Do you have anything dangerous lying around?
No, but since you're here, Dorothy, how about we have lunch? Would your daughter like to join?
Wow, you're actually being considerate.
However, Dorothy only called her daughter's name and didn't try to bring her to the living room. She left her daughter unattended and went to the living room where the mom friends were waiting. I managed to catch Dorothy's running daughter and took her to the living room. I handed her to Dorothy and started preparing lunch. As I was bringing the prepared dishes to the living room, I heard a noise from the hallway. I had a bad feeling and went to check. Dorothy's daughter was pulling out my daughter's toys and playing with them. Sorry, these are my daughter's favorite toys. Let's put them back where they were. As I gently spoke to her and tried to take the toy, she dropped it and started scribbling on the wall with crayons. I grabbed her arm in a panic and she burst into tears. Hearing her cries, Dorothy and the mom friends rushed to the hallway.
What are you doing, Holly? Making my daughter cry. She was just playing.
I'm sorry, but she was drawing on the wall.
She's a child. Let her doodle. It's not a big deal.
But we're renting, so we'd have to pay for repairs.
You really are like a poor person. That's a small expense. You should have been prepared for this when you had a child. Poor thing. She was having fun.
Dorothy starts lecturing me instead of scolding her daughter. The other mom friends just looked the other way, not daring to oppose Dorothy. I give up on reasoning with her and decide to focus on lunch. As usual, she complains about my cooking, calling it bland, tasteless, and inedible. I thought I made a good meal, but today it just doesn't go down well. Just when Dorothy's bragging session starts, I hear the sound of a piano. I rush to the piano room, and as expected, Dorothy's daughter is playing it. I had left the piano lid open and forgot to lock the room.
Stop! Don't touch that!
I raise my voice, and characteristically, I pick up her daughter and usher her out of the room. Dorothy rushes in, hearing her daughter cry.
Holly, what's the problem? Why are you making my daughter cry?
Please, just don't touch the piano. It's really important to me. I bow my head, but Dorothy seems displeased.
What's the big deal? It's just an old piano.
She splashes her bottled coffee all over the piano. I try to wipe it off with my clothes, but it's too late. The coffee seeps into the white case and flows deeper into the strings. I collapse to my knees, realizing there's nothing I can do. The other mom friends rush in, asking what happened. I don't have the energy to answer. Instead, Dorothy gleefully recounts the events.
Holly interrupted my daughter while she was happily playing the piano and made her cry. I didn't like her for a while and she became obsessed with playing the piano, so I poured coffee on her and pretended I never made her cry.
Mom friends wondering which one to follow. One of the mom friends interrupts.
Wait, this piano, it's worth over $1 million.
She mumbles and turns pale.
Oh, what's wrong? Why that long face? Is it about this old piano?
This piano is worth over $1 million. It's a rare piece, one of only a few in the world. She's right. This piano was purchased by my grandmother. It's a limited edition worth about $1 million. I had promised to keep it safe for generations. I never thought it would be ruined like this.
You're lying. Holly, how could someone like you own such a valuable piano? Speak up. Say it's a lie.
No, it's not a lie. This is a cherished piano passed down from my grandmother. I warned you not to touch it before.
If Dorothy spilled coffee on it, then she'll have to pay for the repairs. That would be around $100,000. $100,000? I can't afford that. Besides, it's Holly's fault for not telling me it was valuable.
Dorothy tries to make excuses, but realizes her position. She apologizes profusely.
I'm so sorry, Holly. I had no idea that old piano was so valuable. I'm truly sorry. Please don't bill me for the repairs.
She had always looked down on me and acted arrogantly. Is she really sorry? I think about her past behavior. She's always looked down on me, brought her daughter without notice, and let her play without supervision. She even lectured me for interrupting her daughter's playtime. Dorothy said, if you had told me it was valuable, but you don't spill coffee on something someone cherishes, valuable or not, I can't forgive her. Stop apologizing, Dorothy. She looks up at me, hopeful. I will tell her that. I'll send you the bill for the repairs. Please take your daughter and leave.
What?
She stands there stunned. I point to the door, and the other mom friend escort her out. The tea party ends. I later bill Dorothy for the repairs. Her husband visits and apologizes. Apparently, her attitude had been a problem for a while. He says he is being looked at in a negative light because of this incident. She starts working to pay off the debt and stops attending tea parties. I make sure to lock the piano room from then on. Since then, the piano has been beautifully restored, and in order to prevent such a tragedy from happening again, he has developed a habit of turning the doorknob to make sure the room is securely locked. I resent my inability and wish I had done this from the beginning. Years pass, and my daughter grows up. I pass on the piano to her, knowing she'll take good care of it.
I'm Isabella, a 35-year-old office worker. I'm married to Lucas, who's 5 years younger than me, and we live in a small apartment. Lucas has a sister, Abigail, who's 4 years younger than him. She's already married and has moved out of her in-laws' home. We don't see her or my mother-in-law often, just during summer vacations and Christmas. It's an hour's drive to my in-laws' place, but my father-in-law seems lonely, so he's been visiting us quite frequently lately. Isabella, what on earth are you doing? Open the door within 10 seconds when I ring the doorbell. You're so inconsiderate. My mother-in-law complains if I don't open the door immediately after she rings the doorbell. I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I was in the bathroom and couldn't come right away. My apologies. I don't need excuses. When I arrive, you better come out as quickly as possible. What are you standing there for? Where's my coffee? Honestly, what kind of upbringing did you have? You have no manners. She visits unannounced and expects to be treated like royalty when she's here. To be honest, I find it hard to deal with my mother-in-law. I initially thought I should be polite because she's the woman who gave birth to my husband, but I never expected her to be so rude and self-centered. I head to the kitchen, letting out a small sigh so mother-in-law can't hear. Meanwhile, she's lounging on the sofa, watching TV. Here you go, coffee and some snacks. What is this? You knew I was coming and you didn't get any fancy snacks. Bring out some delicious pastries. I didn't know what to serve since she came unexpectedly, so I offered her a $3 donut from the shelf. But she wanted something more expensive and told me to go buy it right away. Next time, if you could let me know in advance, I'll prepare some pastries for you. Actually, I've been feeling unwell since this morning and was lying on the sofa. I've always been prone to catching colds during seasonal changes. Today is a weekday, but I took the day off for some errands. I never expected mother-in-law to show up today. When I asked why she came today, she said she saw my car and decided to visit. I told her I'd appreciate a heads up, but she said, "Why should I tell you my plans? This is my son's home, so I can come anytime I want. No need to inform you. But if you don't let me know, I can't prepare your favorite snacks. Plus, I have plans this afternoon and will be stepping out, so I can only accommodate you until then." I looked at mother-in-law with a troubled expression and she clearly looked displeased. "What? You want me to leave even though I came all the way here? You have no sense of hospitality, do you?" "No, that's not it. But I took the day off for a reason and have plans. I can only accommodate you until noon today. Please come again when Lucas is around." While snacking, mother-in-law kept talking about how a daughter-in-law should behave. She probably thinks she's doing this for my benefit. But all I wanted was for her to leave the room as soon as possible. Eventually, as I started getting ready to go out, mother-in-law seemed to give up. "Next time, make sure you have at least 3 of my favorite snacks ready," she grumbled as she left. I forgot to remind her to check with me before coming over, so I sent her a WhatsApp message. She never read it. When I told my husband about all this, he said, "That sounds tough, but maybe my mom is just lonely. Could you keep her company when you have time?" I thought, if that's the case, she could at least consider my schedule. Dealing with mother-in-law who always acts on her own terms is becoming increasingly exhausting. We're both busy with work. If you're so concerned, why don't you spend time with your own mother? I told him. He replied, "Isn't that something you should handle, Isabella? Women get along better, and it would make my mom happy. Please do it." And quickly headed for the bath. Clearly, my husband finds it bothersome to deal with mother-in-law too. He'd rather pass that responsibility on to me. I get it. No one wants to be bossed around by mother-in-law after a long day. But I feel the same way, and it's even more stressful because she's not my biological parent. I wish my husband would help out, but that seems unlikely given his current attitude. A few days later, I got home early from work and was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. "Mother-in-law? What's this? The place is a mess. You're in charge of the house, so keep it tidy." Mother-in-law, didn't we just talk about this? Please check with me before coming over. It's really inconvenient when you show up unannounced." I used to be gentle about it, but that only encouraged her to take advantage. So I've started to be more direct about things I don't like. "By the way, you did prepare the snacks I asked for, right? I specifically told you last time. Hurry up and bring them out. I came today looking forward to it." She sat on the sofa expecting me to bring the snacks. But of course, I didn't have time to prepare anything. "I'm sorry. I don't know you were coming, so I didn't prepare any snacks." When I told her I didn't have the snacks, she was visibly annoyed. "What do you mean you didn't prepare them? I told you last time. You're such a failure as a wife. I can't believe Lucas fell for someone like you. I would never let someone like you marry into the family. You're so inconsiderate." I was really irritated by her words and almost retorted. But I held back, knowing it would only make things worse. Ignoring mother-in-law, I continued preparing dinner. What's with the way you're cutting these vegetables? Why can't you cut them nicely? Now she was criticizing the way I was cooking. This is the correct way to cut them. Weren't you aware? What? There's no need to cut them like that. What are you planning to make for dinner? Don't feed my son anything weird. As I was cutting the ingredients, mother-in-law was scrutinizing my every move. It was incredibly uncomfortable, and her constant complaints made everything take longer and made me more frustrated. By the way, what are you here for? It's almost dinner time. I was hoping she wasn't planning to stay, but it turned out she was. Oh, it's fine. This is my son's house, isn't it? So it's practically my house too. I can come whenever I want. Besides, I'm curious about what you usually cook, so I'll taste it before I go. She plans to eat the food I've prepared, even though I didn't invite her. Actually, you don't have to do that. Today I'm making fried chicken, which my husband loves. It might be a bit heavy for you. Today I'm planning to make tomato soup and my husband's favorite fried chicken. I remember her saying she avoids fried foods because of her age. Upon hearing fried chicken, she frowned for a moment. I thought she might leave, but she said, I can't leave without tasting your cooking. Prepare something light to cleanse the palate. She's determined to eat my cooking, whether it's convenient for me or not. So reluctantly, I prepared dinner for her as well. Just as the fried chicken was ready, my husband came home. Mom, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were coming. Clearly, he was surprised to find her at home. It's fine. I was curious about how you're living. I'll have dinner here too. If Isabella is okay with it, then I guess it's fine. But didn't you come unannounced last time? Did you call ahead today? Why should I have to call? This is your house, so it's practically my house too. I don't need to call. She won't even listen to her own son. I sighed where they couldn't hear me. Mom, that's not how it works. Just because it's my house doesn't mean you can show up unannounced. Always call Isabella first to check if it's okay. My husband took my side, but that seemed to upset her. They argued the whole time I was preparing dinner. She even accused me of turning her son against her. Finally, dinner was ready, and we all sat down to eat. My husband was delighted with the fried chicken, but mother-in-law was not. What is this? The fried chicken is too big and greasy. I can't eat this. You shouldn't be feeding my son such unhealthy food. I regret letting him marry you. She complained about every dish I had prepared. What are you talking about? Isabella worked hard to make this. You're the one who insisted on joining us for dinner. If you're not happy, you can leave. My husband stood up for me. And suddenly, mother-in-law started crying. How could you speak to me like that? You used to be so kind. It must be Isabella's fault. She's changed you. She blamed me for her son not taking her side and stormed out, leaving her dinner unfinished. I'm sorry, Isabella. I never thought my mom could be so selfish. My husband apologized on behalf of his mother, clearly not expecting her to act the way she did. After that incident, mother-in-law stopped contacting us and making surprise visits. We thought she was too embarrassed to show up after being scolded by her son. I might have been a bit harsh, but honestly, her unannounced visits were inconvenient. I've been particularly busy with work recently, as it's the busy season. Even though I come home exhausted, it's mentally tough to have mother-in-law attack me in this state and throw me around selfishly. When mother-in-law stopped coming, life got easier. I was more productive at work and at home. I hoped things would stay peaceful, but little did I know, mother-in-law was plotting something terrible. It all started with a phone call. Not long after my husband got home, mother-in-law called. She invited us to a barbecue at her house during the upcoming holiday weekend. Abigail will be there too. Why don't you both come? We were surprised that mother-in-law, who had been so inconsiderate before, was now asking about our availability. My husband and I exchanged glances. Sure, we're free that day. Thanks for calling to invite us. My husband ended the call, and we both thought that maybe his stern words had finally gotten through to her. After all, I thought that instead of storing up my dissatisfaction, I should tell the person I don't like it. A few days later, we went to mother-in-law's for the first time in a while. When we arrived, my sister-in-law and her husband were already there, setting up for the barbecue. We get along well, so I was happy to see her. She's pregnant, so I helped her with her preparations. Mother-in-law was completely different from before. She didn't give me a hard time at all. In fact, she even apologized for her previous behavior. I'm sorry for being so inconsiderate before. Next time, let's plan ahead. When I said that, my mother-in-law looked very happy. The barbecue was fun, and we all enjoyed some light conversation. Since we were staying overnight, I even had a few drinks. But this was just the calm before the storm. The real nightmare began later, around 2 a.m. I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for some water. There, I found mother-in-law rummaging around. This will be the end of that daughter-in-law. I couldn't hear her clearly, but she left the kitchen soon after, so I thought she was just thirsty like me. However, I would find out the next day that this was not the case. The next day, mother-in-law started cooking something in the kitchen. What are you making? My special shrimp po' boy. I prepared it secretly last night. My husband said her shrimp po' boy was delicious, so I was excited to try it. I remembered what happened the night before and was glad I hadn't interrupted her. Mother-in-law asked me to make clam chowder, so I started cooking. If he had kept it a secret, he shouldn't have called out at that time. My mother-in-law asked me to make clam chowder instead since she fried food. So I decided to make clam chowder. When my husband and others smelled the food, they came into the kitchen. Mom's shrimp po' boy. It's been a while. Everyone was looking forward to it. As I was about to serve the food, mother-in-law said, I'll take care of that. You go sit down. I noticed something black on my shrimp po' boy. Just as I was about to eat it, my phone rang. It was a call from a junior colleague at work. Eat your food, Isabella. It won't taste good if it gets cold. But father-in-law isn't here yet. He'll be here soon. Just eat. I was about to eat when my phone kept ringing. Something might have happened, so I excused myself to take the call. I heard mother-in-law make a sound as I left. My father-in-law took my seat as he returned from the bathroom. Mom's shrimp po' boy. Looks delicious. Father-in-law sat down in the empty seat and reached for my shrimp po' boy. "That's Isabella's." Mother-in-law tried to stop him, but no one else intervened because I hadn't touched it yet. "It's fine, she hasn't touched it yet." My husband encouraged father-in-law to go ahead and eat. "Bon appetit." "Don't eat it!" It was too late. Father-in-law had already taken a big bite. "What is this?" Father-in-law suddenly started making a fuss after eating the shrimp po' boy. Everyone stopped eating and looked at him. I returned from my phone call to find father-in-law covered in red hives, struggling to breathe. "I told you not to eat it! That was Isabella's shrimp po' boy!" Confused, we called an ambulance and rushed father-in-law to the hospital. It turned out he had an allergic reaction, but timely treatment saved his life. According to my husband, father-in-law had no food allergies, only to cats and dogs. I'm also allergic to cats. Even a slight touch can give me hives. But there were no cats at mother-in-law's house. The doctor asked us what could have caused the allergic reaction. I noticed mother-in-law looking awkward and uneasy. "What's wrong, Mom? You look pale. Do you know something about Dad's condition?" Well... Mother-in-law had been acting strange. Then I remembered her saying, "That was Isabella's shrimp po' boy." "What did you mean by that? You know something, don't you?" Cornered, mother-in-law finally confessed. "I put cat hair in Isabella's shrimp po' boy. You said you were allergic to cats, right? I wanted to get back at you for last time, but I didn't think it would turn out like this." She admitted to mixing cat hair into my shrimp po' boy. I remember seeing something black in it, but thought it was shrimp whiskers. If I had eaten it, I might have ended up like father-in-law. The thought sent shivers down my spine. However, what mother-in-law did is completely unforgivable. If you make a wrong move... "What were you thinking?" My husband confronted mother-in-law. "She never respects me. She only serves cheap snacks and doesn't listen to me." I was dumbfounded. The reason I couldn't prepare better snacks was that mother-in-law always showed up unannounced. "If you had told us you were coming, I would have prepared your favorite snacks and listened to you," I said. Mother-in-law's selfishness had put father-in-law in the hospital, and I felt helpless. "It's not Isabella's fault. It's yours, Mom." Mother-in-law lost her temper. "I'm the mother-in-law. She should be prepared for my visits. She never treats me well, so I thought I'd teach her a lesson by putting cat hair in her food." Mother-in-law showed no signs of remorse. "That's it. I can't forgive you for trying to harm someone I care about. We're cutting ties with you," my husband declared. "Me too. I can't deal with you anymore, especially with a baby on the way." How does it feel to be disowned by your own children? If it were me, I don't think I could ever recover. Mother-in-law, who was always high on pride, insisted she did nothing wrong, even when criticized by her husband and sister-in-law. So, we got permission from the doctor and went to visit father-in-law in his hospital room. When father-in-law heard what had happened, he apologized to me on mother-in-law's behalf. Right after he was discharged, he served mother-in-law with divorce papers. "Why should I get divorced? All I did was play a little prank on my daughter-in-law. I absolutely won't agree to a divorce." Mother-in-law, who never thought she'd be divorced, was outraged. In the end, the situation escalated to involve other family members. Mother-in-law was humiliated and forced to sign the divorce papers in front of everyone. We moved to a secure apartment far from our parents' home to ensure mother-in-law couldn't visit. The moving costs were a burden, but it was worth it to be free from the stress of mother-in-law's visits. Thanks to that, I became pregnant and safely entered the stable period. We found out we were having a boy and spent happy times picking out baby items and thinking of names. That's when it happened. Mother-in-law, somehow finding out about my pregnancy, suddenly showed up in front of my workplace. I was shocked to see her as I was leaving work. "I finally found you!" She closed the distance between us with incredible speed. "It's all your fault. If you hadn't left your seat that day, I wouldn't be divorced now. Take care of me." She appeared out of nowhere, demanding I take care of her. Apparently, mother-in-law was not only shunned by father-in-law's relatives, but also her own, and she was struggling financially. "I have nothing to do with your problems. Why should I take care of you?" I spoke my mind, as she is now a stranger to me. But mother-in-law grabbed me and started yelling right in front of my workplace. "Stop it! I'm pregnant!" "I don't care! I'm struggling here!" Security and colleagues tried to restrain her, but she was uncontrollable. I was worried about my unborn child when I heard sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police for me. In fact, the person who made the report also thought I was being attacked by a suspicious person and called the police. Mother-in-law was taken away by arriving officers. I told my husband about the incident when I got home. "I can't believe she'd do something like that. I'm just glad you're okay, Isabella." I felt a bit sorry for mother-in-law, being referred to as that person by her own son. It's true that the mother-in-law is at fault, but as a mother myself, I feel a little sorry for her child who calls her that person instead of calling her mom. Mother-in-law ended up spending a few days in jail to reflect on her actions. But even after her release, she was still struggling financially. She called all her relatives for financial help, but no one was willing. We also received a call, but there was no way we'd help her after what she had done. But mother-in-law didn't give up. She kept asking, "When will they come to get me?" But her children never came. Mother-in-law finally realized she was abandoned and spent her days crying in regret. On the other hand, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. Giving birth for the first time was difficult, but I was really happy that the baby was born healthy. A month after my discharge, my sister-in-law and father-in-law visited us with gifts. My father-in-law and I have a lot of issues with my mother-in-law, but we still have an agreement to meet regularly. Father-in-law is now living in a small apartment near us and works as a tennis coach. He was actually a strong tennis player in high school. I have always been an active person, and I often spend my days off doing physical activities such as running and swimming, and enjoys buying toys and clothes for his grandson. Despite all the drama with mother-in-law, we're happy now. Our son is growing well, and we're looking forward to raising him together.
"What is this? Only for Taylor? How could she be so cruel?" With a loud slam on the table, father-in-law, his face red with anger, yelled at me. The table was adorned with lavish dishes. Yet, right in front of my mother-in-law was just a single cup of instant noodles. Until a moment ago, she had stared at it in disbelief. Now, she covered her face, appearing as if she was breaking down in tears. But I saw it. Underneath her hand, she had a sly grin. Seeing father-in-law on her side, she probably thought the situation was turning in her favor. But it wasn't going to be that easy. This instant noodle was just the beginning of our revenge. My name is Eva. I've been married to Robbie for 5 years. We had our first daughter last year, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. We started living with my in-laws right after our daughter was born. Back then, we lived in company housing, but Robbie was transferred by his company. The new location was near Robbie's childhood home. Hearing this, Robbie's parents were thrilled and began preparations for us to move in. They renovated their aging home, even preparing a room for the baby. It was hard to say no after all that. Sorry, Eva. Mom got a bit too excited. Yeah, after all they've done, it's hard to refuse. But you're at home during the day, right? Just you and Mom. Won't it be uncomfortable? The renovation was their idea. But they made a room for Jenna. And they said they'd help with her. That's a big help. Robbie seemed unsure till the end. But we eventually decided to live with his parents. However, living with the in-laws wasn't easy, especially my mother-in-law, who seemed to have hope for a grandson. She seemed to resent me for having a girl. She constantly made snide remarks about my housework and parenting. The worst was her comments about my cooking. What's with this plant food, Eva? It looks bad. Have you been feeding Robbie this? Well, Robbie said he liked it. Oh, Robbie's just being polite. I can't eat this. Clean it up. You're not eating it? No. I don't like food made by someone like you. And she'd leave the food untouched. No matter how I adjusted the seasoning, she'd taste a bit and say, "Still not good. Eva, is your taste off? Serving this to your mother-in-law? Even fast food or instant noodles are better." And she'd leave it. Lately, she'd bring home burgers and fries and eat them ostentatiously next to my dishes. It was clear she had no intention of eating my food. If she wasn't going to eat it, why should I prepare her portion? The day I left her spot empty, she was even worse. "Why is there no food for me?" she shrieked. "Well, you always say you don't like my cooking and eat something else. So I thought, unbelievable. Just because I eat something different, you treat me like this? This is too much." She covered her face, sobbing dramatically. "Wait, please. It's just that you always... So you're saying it's my fault?" She's acting like a tantrum-throwing child. My daughter, who was already at the table, sensed the tense atmosphere and began to cry. "This is a mess." Quickly prepared a meal for my mother-in-law and placed it in front of her, who was still complaining. "I can't believe this. What on earth were you thinking?" I wanted to say those words were mine, but I held back. I felt it was pointless to confront her directly. That night, I discussed my mother-in-law's behavior with my husband, Robbie. Both Robbie and father-in-law leave early for work and return late, so they're unaware of the weekday meals. "What? Mom did that? But she's not like that on weekends." "She doesn't complain on weekends, probably because you and father-in-law are around," I said. Robbie looked puzzled. I understood his disbelief. No one wants to think their mother would treat their wife that way. I had hoped that by keeping quiet, things would stay calm. But today's outburst was the last straw. And now, her snide remarks were not just directed at me, but also at her daughter. If I was cleaning, she'd follow me around saying, "Eva, you're so careless. It's a shame for the house after the renovation. When I showered with my daughter, she'd scold from the dressing room. Don't be so loud. It's unladylike for a girl to be noisy. Who did she get that from? When she told my daughter, Jenna is cute, but it would have been better if you were a boy. I was horrified. I could handle her comments about me, but I feared my daughter would be her next target. When I thought about it, I couldn't stand still. Tears in my eyes, I told Robbie everything. He seemed concerned and said, "Okay, I'll talk to Mom." Those words made me breathe a sigh of relief. I hoped that, as her son, he could make her reflect on her behavior. Once you calm down, you will realize that you are doing something outrageous. After feeling relieved, I suddenly felt doubt rising inside me. But a doubt crept in. Would she really reflect? After all, she told a small child with a smile that it would have been better if she were a boy. Then, maybe Mom will. Eva, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Can you help? Yeah. I was against living together from the start. As Robbie spoke, I took out my phone and started searching. Eva! There's laundry piling up. Are you just trying to get Robbie on your side and neglecting the housework? As expected, Robbie's warning had no effect. With Robbie and father-in-law around, she acted even kinder. But when they weren't, she was even harsher. Hearing her shrill voice, Jenna, who had just fallen asleep, began to cry. Even hearing the crying, my mother-in-law just frowned, showing no guilt. So noisy for a girl. It's because you always cuddle her, Eva. Don't speak ill of Jenna. I'm not. I'm just saying it would have been cuter if she were a boy. You're overreacting. She smirked and approached the crib. Don't waste Robbie's money on these gadgets. Girls grow up fine without them, she said, knocking over the baby monitor. Fell, narrowly missing Jenna's face. As I rushed to check on Jenna, my mother-in-law laughed. Oh, and next week is Dad's birthday. Are you prepared? We're inviting his colleagues, so don't embarrass us. Though, your cooking is worse than instant noodles. She laughed loudly and left the living room. Holding my daughter, I could only comfort her. It's okay. Don't cry. It was scary. I won't forgive her. I'll get my revenge side. However, a burning desire for revenge against my mother-in-law raged. A few days later, as she had mentioned, father-in-law's birthday arrived. In their family, they had a tradition of hosting a small home party for father-in-law's birthday every year. This year, upon hearing about it, father-in-law's subordinate said, "Please let us celebrate too," and was invited. Of course, the usual relatives would also attend. It's easy for father-in-law to just invite people, but I wish he'd consider the one who has to prepare everything. I had to clean and tidy up the living room, which would be the party venue, and prepare meals for over 10 people. Of course, there was no chance my mother-in-law would help. She just stood behind me giving orders without lifting a finger. Even when Robbie offered to help, saying, "Mom, Eva, should I help with something?" she'd dismiss him, saying, "Oh, no, Robbie, you don't have to do anything." And then add, "Eva is so good at winning Robbie over, making him do housework. Aren't you ashamed as a wife?" As the relatives and father-in-law subordinates began to arrive, she quickly left the kitchen. I overheard her boasting, "Isn't our house lovely? It's always clean." I can hear people saying things like, "No, that's not true. I just clean my house properly." I'm the one who cleans it. With anger boiling inside, I continued preparing the food. And a few minutes later, all the guests had arrived and were seated, waiting for the food. My mother-in-law, of course, took the seat next to father-in-law, chatting away as if the food would magically appear. When I entered the living room with the dishes, there was a chorus of admiration. "It looks delicious! So stylish!" My mother-in-law, ever the opportunist, said, "Right? Well, I made the two." I silently set the dishes on the table. I placed the main dishes in the center and side dishes in front of each guest. And finally, I placed an instant ramen in front of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's eyes, covered in makeup, blinked repeatedly. She blinked in disbelief, looking between me and the instant ramen. "Eva, please enjoy," I said. "What's the meaning of—" The lively atmosphere was instantly silenced. The relatives and father-in-law subordinates sensed the tension. "What's going on here?" Father-in-law was the first to shout. "Eva, serving Taylor instant ramen? Explain yourself!" Slammed his fist on the table. But I didn't flinch. She always said my cooking was worse than instant ramen, so I served her just that. She'd never say that. "How dare you treat your mother-in-law this way?" No matter how loudly he shouted, I remained calm. Father-in-law, now frustrated, pointed at Robbie. "Robbie, this is because of your poor upbringing. Get rid of that awful woman now." But Robbie coldly replied, "Fine, then I'll cut ties with you all." "What? What do you mean? If you can still say kick Eva out after saying this, then it's mom who should be kicked out." Robbie showed father-in-law his phone. On the screen was my mother-in-law, laughing as she knocked over the baby monitor. From the phone speaker, her recorded voice echoed, "Your cooking is trash. Even instant ramen is better." My mother-in-law's face, which had been downcast as if she were the victim, visibly paled upon hearing the recording. She must have thought father-in-law would side with her and help her navigate the situation. But that wasn't the case. Robbie played multiple recordings from the baby monitor, showcasing her numerous hurtful words and actions. Initially, she tried to avoid eye contact, but soon realized everyone's gaze was fixed on her. In desperation, she lunged for Robbie's phone, losing her balance and face planting into one of the dishes I had prepared. It's a fabrication! Eva's lies!" she screamed, her face smeared with makeup and sauce. But her voice was unmistakably the same as the one coming from the phone. All the guests looked at the mother-in-law with disdain, as there was no way to escape the situation. The guests looked at her with disdain, and father-in-law was in shock. "Taylor, it's not true. It's not." No matter how much she protested, no one defended her. Robbie stood up and came to my side. "We're leaving this house," he declared, and we left the living room. We could still hear her incomprehensible screams, but we never looked back. Soon after, we left their house with our pre-packed bags. Everything that happened was a plan Robbie and I had devised. When Robbie learned of her harassment, he had consulted father-in-law, who refused to acknowledge his wife's behavior. We feared that without undeniable evidence, we'd be forced to continue living with them. So, Robbie devised a plan to expose her in a way she couldn't deny. The baby monitor and enduring her verbal abuse were all part of it. After moving to our new home, father-in-law reached out to apologize. He apparently divorced her after the incident. In front of his relatives and subordinates, his wife's disgusting behavior was revealed, and father-in-law even made a comment to cover it up. Robbie thought that they would have lost face if they didn't get a divorce. We don't know how she's managing now. But she tried to approach Robbie at his workplace, not knowing our new address. She was reported as a suspicious person and taken by the police. Father-in-law said that she should forgive him because she had thrown out her mother-in-law. But she said, "What are you going to do?" For me, it was the time when I consulted her about Eva. So to be honest, I think we can just ignore it like this. I don't mean right away. That's right. I'll let him remind me for a while. And so, we haven't been in touch for a while now. Maybe in the future, we'll let him see our child. For now, we want to enjoy our time as family of 3. Robbie admitted that he had been too focused on work since the transfer and hadn't been there for Jenna and me. Since moving, he's been taking days off to spend with us. We're looking forward to a peaceful life together in our new environment.
Dad, remember that gymnastics routine from yesterday? The one where the bride stripped off all of her clothes?
The atmosphere in the wedding reception hall went dead silent at my daughter's words. Just as the bride was about to read a letter to her parents, 5-year-old Tina blurted it out. The bride's face turned to stone, and Luke, who was holding Tina on his lap, looked like he'd seen a ghost. As the eyes of everyone in the hall turned towards our table, Tina continued.
Why was she undressed if it wasn't bath time? You'll catch a cold if you undress anywhere other than the bathroom.
To a child, it might be an innocent question, but adults instantly understand the implication. The hall couldn't settle down. The murmur was still there. Luke took Tina outside, and the female host, although shaken, tried to continue the ceremony. Encouraged by the host, the bride tried to resume reading her letter, but her voice was clearly trembling. Usually you'd hear sniffling and see tears of emotion filling the hall, but not a sound could be heard. Tina's comment had turned what should have been a joyous event into complete chaos. I'm Bianca, 33 years old, and I live with Luke and our 5-year-old daughter, Tina. Luke has a brother who got married a bit late, at 40, to a much younger woman who's 28. Finally, they decided to tie the knot. At the family meeting about the engagement, my brother-in-law seemed utterly smitten with his fiancée. It was really heartwarming to see. Who could have thought that attending brother-in-law's wedding as a family of 3 would lead to such disaster? Naturally, after the wedding reception ended, the bridal suite turned into a scene of chaos. I immediately confronted Luke. What was that all about? That's just Tina being Tina. Don't take it seriously. Our kid just disrupted the whole ceremony. Of course, I'm rattled. And it's your lack of discipline that led to this. You need to teach her better manners. Luke then quickly handed Tina over to me and left in a hurry. I felt like he was running away from me. We were staying at Luke's parents' house that night before the wedding because it took place at a hotel near his hometown, and we live far away. His parents are genuinely kind people. They always have my back. Unlike some of my friends who dislike going to their in-laws, I've never felt uncomfortable there. That's why we had planned to take a week-long vacation around the time of the wedding and relax at Luke's parents' house before heading home. Even though both my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are planning on living in that house, it's spacious enough to accommodate us comfortably. Tina, who's usually told not to run around in our cramped apartment, seemed excited and restless, walking all over the house to explore. Come to think of it, I recall Luke and my sister-in-law being absent for a bit last night when we were having a good time drinking with my brother-in-law and parents-in-law.
Mom, Dad's playing around. Tina wants to join in too.
I feel like Tina did say something like that. Who would have thought that what she was referring to was Luke and my sister-in-law cheating? In the bridal suite, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law spent a long time talking. Eventually, we decided to head to the after party where our friends were waiting. As for Tina and me, we ended up going back to my parents-in-law's house. If what Tina said is true, I am so sorry. While returning from the hall, my mother-in-law kept apologizing to me, looking genuinely regretful. Please stop. Luke is the one who's at fault here. Mother-in-law, you've done nothing wrong. It's my fault for not properly teaching him how to treat women. No family could possibly teach that level of decency. When we arrived at the parent-in-law's home, Luke was already back, sitting alone, watching TV and drinking a beer. Standing tall, my mother-in-law broke the ice. So, what kind of gymnastics are we talking about? I'd love to see it. That's not it. I was just asking my future sister-in-law to look after my brother. What a considerate younger brother you are. But I can't imagine Tina lying. She's only 5 years old, and she often says strange things. Tina is my granddaughter, and she's very bright. So you're taking the word of a bad girl over your own son? Don't you dare call my precious granddaughter a bad girl. Are you getting mad? Both mother-in-law and I have our suspicions about Luke, but we can't really push it further based solely on the word of a 5-year-old. Luke won't admit anything. He just went into a sulk and locked himself in his room. 2 days after the wedding, both mother-in-law and I kept an eye on Luke, but he didn't do anything suspicious. Well, brother-in-law and sister-in-law went off on their honeymoon, so it's not like he had a chance to be suspicious anyway. Meanwhile, Tina, ever the little explorer around the house, found something unbelievable.
Mommy, what does this say? Tina can't read cursive yet.
You shouldn't be going through Grandma and Grandpa's stuff.
No, it's not like that. I found this in Dad's bag. Is it a letter? Tina's written to her friends at preschool before.
Let me see. Shockingly, it was a letter from sister-in-law to Luke. No, calling it a letter doesn't quite do it justice. It was undeniably a love letter. The letter read, Dear Luke, the day before the wedding was so exciting, wasn't it? We have to be cautious for a while since we're being watched at home. But we'll definitely have a chance, so don't give up. You're the only one I love, Luke. The reason I married an older man is so I could be with you. Come get me soon. I couldn't let myself break down in front of Tina, so I forced myself to keep my composure. This is a work-related letter, so Mom will take care of it, okay?
Okay,
Tina replied cheerfully, heading off on another household adventure. So Tina wasn't mistaken after all. She really did see what was happening. I calmly took a photo of the letter and placed it back into Luke's bag. Then I went to the kitchen where mother-in-law was making pickles. Mother-in-law, Tina found a love letter that sister-in-law sent to Luke. What? As I showed the photo of the letter I had taken on my phone, mother-in-law made a face. What is this? It's disturbing. This is unfair to brother-in-law. Why have such a flashy wedding if this is going on? If she didn't love him, why did she marry him? Mother-in-law is visibly angry, her face turning red. At this point, I decided to tell mother-in-law something that had been bothering me. Luke said he has to go back alone tomorrow because work suddenly came up even though he was supposed to be on vacation. Mother-in-law looks up at me as if deep in thought. Doesn't that seem odd? Exactly. Mother-in-law and I exchanged glances, both of us seemingly concerned about the same thing. The timing is just too perfect. Plus, his brother and his wife are on their honeymoon in Hawaii. Do you think they're planning to meet up there? I nodded in agreement. I hate to say it, but brother-in-law is a very kind person who, unfortunately, is a bit naive and easily deceived. There's no doubt in my mind that the two of them plan to have a secret meeting without brother-in-law noticing. After all the trouble to finally get married, and he ends up with a woman like that. It's even sadder because they seemed so happy. Let's go. With that, mother-in-law suddenly stood up and began washing her hands. All right, start packing for Hawaii. Your father's coming too. What? I was genuinely surprised by mother-in-law's sudden declaration. But she looked at me and smiled, clearly pleased. We're going to expose everything. Do they have any idea how much we spent on that wedding? Just because he's marrying a younger woman, we even chipped in 30 grand. This is no joke. We're definitely getting that back. I couldn't help but applaud mother-in-law's determination and immediately started to prepare as well. For some reason, mother-in-law seemed strangely excited. But deep down, I was excited too. Just wait. We'll make them wish they were never born. The next morning, Luke was having breakfast, trying too hard to keep a straight face. It's really a shame you have to work after finally getting some time off. Just relax and enjoy your time. Even though no one was listening, Luke loudly announced his departure and left. In a flurry, we quickly packed our bags. Our parents-in-law, Tina, and I left about 2 hours behind them. Luckily, we got the tickets and a hotel with no issue. Tina is thrilled, shouting, "Plane! Plane! Plane!" We choose a lodging spot a bit away from the hotel where we heard brother-in-law would be staying, so we wouldn't attract attention. Upon arrival, mother-in-law decided to call brother-in-law to see how things were going. "How's Hawaii?" Responding to mother-in-law, brother-in-law's relaxed voice came through the speakerphone. "It's warm and relaxing. We're planning to go to Sea Life Park, Hawaii tomorrow. Look forward to some souvenirs." Brother-in-law seemed to be having a great time, but mentioned, "Well, my wife is going out to dinner with a friend who lives in Oahu tonight, so I'll be alone." Hearing that, mother-in-law lifted her gaze and exchanged glances with me. No doubt, Luke and sister-in-law are probably having a secret meeting tonight. Well, enjoy Hawaii. Mother-in-law decided to hang up, perhaps concluding that now was not the time to say anything. It's sad for brother-in-law, who is in the dark about all of this. Who would have thought we'd catch Luke and sister-in-law on a date as soon as we landed? Though we have valuable information, my emotions were a mess. I wish it were a lie. I wish it were just sister-in-law's one-sided affection. But Luke had followed her all the way to Hawaii. Ignoring this wasn't an option anymore. After discussing with my parents-in-law, we decided that father-in-law, who could blend in the most, should tail sister-in-law as she left the hotel for her date tonight. Father-in-law put on a hat and a mask and transformed him into an unnoticeable passerby in a second. Way to go, Dad. You're completely unnoticeable. Tina also says, "Grandpa, it suits you." She's delighted. Whether he's being praised or teased, father-in-law, easily influenced by mother-in-law's words, decided to stake out at a cafe in front of the hotel, where brother-in-law and his group are staying. "Hun, your mission is threefold. 1. Follow daughter-in-law as she leaves the hotel. 2. Confirm she's meeting with Luke. And 3. Keep an eye on her until she enters and leaves another hotel. Got it?" Father-in-law nodded earnestly at mother-in-law's forceful instructions. Equipped with his high-sensitivity DSLR camera and a big telephoto lens that he bought as a hobby, he headed out. We're incredibly grateful to father-in-law, who willingly took on the task despite the long hours it would entail. Mother-in-law, Tina, and I finished dinner and returned to the hotel. After putting Tina to bed, we waited for father-in-law's return. Surprisingly, father-in-law didn't come back until 3 in the morning. "Let me sleep for now," he muttered as he crawled into bed, looking exhausted, so we decided to hear the full story the next morning. The next day, as we looked at the photos father-in-law had taken while listening to his account, there was irrefutable evidence. True to his love for photography, father-in-law's shots were incredibly detailed even from a distance. You could see the two of them embracing clearly. So, she really is cheating after all. It's a hard truth to accept for brother-in-law and me, but living a lie in a marriage is not an option. Seeing my downcast mood, mother-in-law asserted, "We should put an end to this difficult time as soon as possible." I couldn't agree more. For the second day, we learned brother-in-law planned to go to Sea Life Park, Hawaii. We decided to rent a car and follow him there. Inside the park, we left Tina with father-in-law, while mother-in-law and I walked around. Soon enough, we spotted brother-in-law and his wife. There was brother-in-law, genuinely interested in the aquarium displays, and sister-in-law glued to her phone, showing zero interest in the aquatic life. Just as we were about to approach them, mother-in-law's phone rang. Apparently, father-in-law had spotted Luke coming out of the restroom. They're probably planning to meet discreetly here as well without my son noticing. You're probably right. Let's wait for that moment. We kept our distance and waited for sister-in-law to make a move. Just as expected, within 10 minutes, she left brother-in-law, who was busy looking at souvenirs, and started walking somewhere. We discreetly followed her into an exhibit area that was less crowded and had fewer visitors. Once she found Luke, she immediately leapt into his arms and hugged him. Doing this without even realizing we were watching? What are you thinking? Something inside me broke the moment I witnessed this reality, and I couldn't hold back any longer. I marched up to the embracing couple and pulled them apart. Luke was shocked, his eyes wide open at my sudden appearance. I unleashed several slaps on him right then and there. Ow, stop it! I honestly don't remember how many times I hit him before mother-in-law stopped me. Mother-in-law grabbed sister-in-law, who tried to escape when we showed up. How dare you deceive my precious son! Sit down on the floor. Frustrated, Luke and sister-in-law gave in and sat down on the floor. But causing more of a scene would bother other people around us, so we all moved to the rental car for now. Brother-in-law was already in the car, looking sad. It seemed he'd heard about what happened from father-in-law. In the minivan, we pushed Luke and sister-in-law into the farthest back row, while mother-in-law and I sat in the second row to block their exit. When did you start cheating? I'm not cheating or anything. Why are you all even in Hawaii? What about you? Why are you here? I'm here for work. Don't lie. You came chasing after this woman, didn't you? It's a coincidence. Even then, Luke still tried to deceive us, so I confronted him with the evidence, photos that father-in-law had taken. We can see you two were having fun until around 3 a.m. Father-in-law followed you. Luke sighed heavily. Sister-in-law kept her eyes down and said nothing. So what Tina said during the wedding reception wasn't a lie, was it? You two were exercising the night before the wedding, weren't you? Look, I was in a tough spot too. I was bothered when sister-in-law came on to me. I told her multiple times that I have a loving wife and daughter, so it can't happen, right? Just then, Luke started to shift all the blame onto sister-in-law, who responded with an incredulous, huh? Grabbing Luke, she yelled, Who is the one saying, leave my brother and be with me? No, I never said that, Luke shot back, and their argument began to heat up. Back and forth they went, arguing about who said what. I didn't come to Hawaii to listen to this nonsense. Finally, I couldn't hold back any longer. Enough! What? I don't care who initiated it. Why can't you just apologize when you clearly betrayed me and my brother-in-law? I'm the victim here. If you try to dodge responsibility anymore, I'll make your life a living hell. What are you planning to do? Let's just say I'll make sure everyone in your social and work circle recognizes you as the fool who slept with his brother's wife. What's the point in doing that? Well, if people aren't warned, you might try to make moves on their wives or girlfriends. I would never do that. You've already done it, haven't you? He had no comeback. Luke fell silent. It turns out, during a family dinner that had doubled as a meeting to sort things out, sister-in-law had developed a liking for Luke. Luke didn't mind the attention and continued a casual relationship with her. Bizarrely, Luke even suggested to sister-in-law, why don't you first marry my brother, get a share of his wealth in the divorce, and then marry me? For some unknown reason, sister-in-law seemed to go along with it. Unbelievable to be swayed by these two. Luke, who was supposed to be my husband, now looks utterly repulsive to me. This dirty man is all yours. I don't want him anymore. Sister-in-law, surprisingly pleased with my words, turns to me and smiles. Really? What was all that fighting about just moments ago? But let me tell you, a man like this will definitely do it again. Cheating outside is one thing, but hitting on a family member is just sick. Especially when he falls for a terrible woman like you. There's no cure. Sister-in-law, entirely unfazed by my words, smirks as if she's won. Is that a cry of defeat, I wonder? Well, do enjoy your few months together. Then even Luke joins in, grabbing sister-in-law's hand and starting to celebrate. What an incredibly cheerful pair they are. Because of you, I spent $30,000 on a wedding we didn't even need to have. I expect that money back. I'll also be seeking compensation in the divorce proceedings. I expect $20,000 from each of you. Hearing me and mother-in-law's demand, sister-in-law suddenly shouts, That's totally unfair. Luke joins in, saying, As if we can afford that. If you don't pay, we'll go through lawyers and take this to court. If you two can find happiness under a 70,000 debt, be my guest. This is outrageous. We just love each other a little. That's precisely the problem. You'll both be held fully responsible for what you did. Just then, brother-in-law suddenly started moving the rental car. Where do you think you're going? Brother-in-law drove silently, and when he reached a deserted area near the ocean, he took their wallets and cell phones and left them there. I was surprised. I had never seen brother-in-law this angry before. As the rental car pulled away, "Don't leave us here!" Their cries of, "Please come back!" echoed. "Watch out for snakes and mongoose, okay?" I waved cheerfully as I said this. I wonder how long it would take to walk back to town from here. I hope they made it back safely. Just then, I received a call from father-in-law. "Tina is looking for you, Bianca, and we decided to head back to the aquarium." "Let's enjoy Hawaii while we're here." Absolutely. We returned to the aquarium. At the large tank, brother-in-law is holding Tina's hand, and both seem engrossed by the sharks. They actually look happy. "Better to see these lovely smiles and waste time on fools." Father-in-law's words lifted my spirits. Brother-in-law also appears quite relieved, which is surprising considering he was just betrayed by his new wife. I bet he's hurting inside. I know I am, being betrayed by Luke, but I refuse to shed tears over them. I thought brother-in-law must feel the same. Later on, brother-in-law and sister-in-law's divorce is finalized. Only 5 days had passed since the wedding reception, but brother-in-law returned all the wedding gifts to the guests. I also finalized my divorce with Luke, and Tina will now be living with me. I ended up getting all the assets in the divorce settlement. We agreed on $400 per month for child support. Luke, ever conscious of what others think, easily agreed when my parents-in-law and I, through our lawyers, demanded money from him. He ended up shouldering a $70,000 repayment, but you can't control what people say. Rumors spread easily that he had an affair with his brother's wife and even followed her to Hawaii. Friends began to distance themselves. Even at work, the rumors got around. He got transferred from his high-performance sales team to a basement document storage area. It's been a year now, and I'm still on good terms with my in-laws. Just the other day, while looking through a school backpack catalog with my soon-to-be elementary school daughter, she said, "Grandma will buy it for you." "No, Grandpa will buy it." It'll be a lasting joke that the room went silent when Tina said, "Let's settle this with a gymnastics competition."